Hey guys, welcome back to Xamarin guys. So in this tutorial we'll be using Xamarin Essential Web Authenticator, that is our Google authentication inside our Xamarin Forms application. So it provides a lot of other authentication like Facebook, Apple and Microsoft login authentication too, but here we'll be using Google authentication at first, and if time favors then I'll be using Facebook as well as Microsoft or login authentication in my next tutorial. So this is the sample that the Xamarin Essential has provided us. I'll give those link in my video's description. You can just go there and grab that code over. Now, in order to understand the full flow of Xamarin Forms web authentication, we'll just create a new Xamarin Forms app and giving a app name as X Essentials Google Auth. So basically we'll be going to our main page.xaml. Here we'll be creating a very basic UI, that is our Google login UI. Before that, let's check whether our application compiles or not. So let me start the app. So this is my main page that is running, that is our blank app. Now let's create the button at first, that is our Google button, which when gets clicked then we are going to call our event handler, that is button click event handler, which gets clicked then we are going to call this method. So whenever that button is clicked then we'll perform all the process. I recommend you to use MBBM way of data binding. So but in order to make this tutorial very simple, I'm just grabbing the code that we really require whenever that button is clicked. So this is the Google command that is going to be triggered whenever the button is clicked. That is a very simple MBBM way of data mining. You don't need to focus on that right now. So this web authentication result is going to be get inherited from Xamarin Essentials. Here scheme is just like a string name. So this is the string name that gets called whenever that button is clicked. So Google command button will send Google string as a scheme name. So we can just hard code it as of now as Google, because we know that this is a Google button. So this string is going to be passed. If it was Microsoft authentication button, then we could have written scheme name as Microsoft, and if it was Facebook, then we could have written scheme name as Facebook. So we know that our scheme name is going to be Google. So scheme.name our equals to the Google. That's all. So all the process as well as event will be triggered over here only. That is our else if condition. We can just remove this if scheme dot equals Apple. We don't need that. So first thing first, authentication URL, that is just a string. So this is the URL where we will be sending local host address, that is our locally sign up process that will be followed in web as well as our mobile apps. So this authentication token is the token that is like our authentication string that gets generated whenever the authentication is succeeded, or else it is going to throw an error in the catch exception. That is, in this section we will just display the exceptional message, that is ex.message, and the line number 63 is not required. So this line is not required. So let me start the app, and I highly recommend you to add breakpoint and run the debugging process by clicking F5, so that we can just know what we are going to follow. So let's run the app. I think it should provide me error. Okay, we got some UI issues also. So let me put that button to center and expand, and again refresh it. Whenever I click the button, then it should throw me error, that is the URL is empty, that is we are not giving the URL. Yes, we got the error that the format of the URL is not valid. That means we haven't provided the URL, that is our local host URL where we will be performing authentication inside our app. So let's open a new tab and type Xamarin Essential Web Authenticator. I will give those link in my video's description. You can just grab it out there. So we need to configure at first our Android app. So let's get back to the app itself. Inside our main activity.cs, we will be just calling this line of code let's create a folder name and add that callback scheme so that we can just call inside our Android app. So let's create a new class name as XAppConstant. These are some constant that will be just inheriting inside our main activity class. So let's copy that constant and then paste it over here. So we'll be calling that class, that is XAppConstant class that we have just now created, and then dot, we need to create a public method for this class, that is our callback scheme, so that we can just grab that constant over here. So we have configured our Android, and this is the final part that need to be added inside our main activity.cs. So let's get back to the code. Over here on resume method, we just need to call this line of code. So we have done our Android configuration. Now let's go to the iOS. So let me copy that code, and inside our appdelegate.cs, here we need to put the code. So we don't need to inherit anything over here. Alright, we have configured our Android and iOS project successfully. Now the final and the easiest part is the backend. So it is really easy if you follow my way. So here we'll be using a web authentication backend, so in order to make our authentication process secure. So we don't need to go through all the documentation over here. So please follow my way in order to make your life easier. So let's use the Xamarin Essentials samples itself in order to get our local host address and use it inside our app and make a successful login authentication using Google. So let's download the code here in my system, and let's wait for some time till it gets downloaded. Let me open that whole project. So you can just see over here there is sample folder, and inside sample folder there is a folder name as sample.service server.webauthenticator. So we'll just directly open that whole web app. If you don't know about backend, don't worry about anything. Here we are not going to do any miracle steps, just copy and paste, that's all. So let's remove all the Facebook, Microsoft and Apple authentication from our web API project. So we'll be just copy and pasting the client ID and client secrets from our Google Developer Console. That's all. That is the thing that is required over here in order to make the all the authentication process. We don't need to do anything over here. So we'll be using this local host address in order to make the authentication process possible inside our mobile app. So this is the address that we'll be calling in order to perform Google authentication. So in order to do that, we need some secrets from Google Developer Console. So let's go to Google Developer Console and create a new project. So I think if you are new to Google Developer Console, you will just get to this screen where you will be just creating a new project and then just create it. Here I have given name of my project as Xamarin Essential Google Auth. We don't need to select any internal or external over there, and give a name anything you may like. I'm just putting name as Xamarin Essential Google Auth, then just click on save. Now the first part is over. The second part will be creating credentials for this app. In order to do that, just click on create credentials, auth client ID, then you'll just select the web app, that is we are just doing some web authentication process. That's all. Now here you can just see over here authorized redirect URL. So this authorized redirect URL should be over here, that is our local host address. I'll just copy it and then paste it inside over here. The final part will be adding slash sign in Google. So we'll be adding sign in Google at last in order to redirect the user to the Google authentication process. So we'll get our client ID and client secret, which we'll be adding it inside our web authenticator web API project. We can just exclude this line of code And in order to make the whole secured connection, we have just configured a class name as configuration, that is iConfiguration, that is getting all the configuration files from there. So we don't want as of now. We'll just add our client ID and client secret over here, and then run our first web API. Now you can just see over here our application just revealed it, and then we are just adding mobile auth / Google. Yes, we got our first authentication process successfully. So our whole authentication process is working on our local host. So we can just use this local host in order to do all the authentication process inside our app. And don't forget not to stop the whole local host app, that is our web authenticator app, in order to do the login process. So our web authenticator app is also running, and this app is also running side by side, and we can just check it out over here. We will get our authentication token successfully when we press continue button. So when I click on continue button, then I should get the whole authentication process. Yes, we got our authentication process successful, and then we'll get our access token over here. So we'll be using this access token in order to generate all the users properties like email, anything you may like. It depends upon what your app requirement is. So we'll get our user information from here, from our token. So let me create a method named as generate user information using token. So we don't want this method over here, so let me copy that and then paste it in the line number 60. And whenever I get that authentication token successful, then we'll be adding that parameter as string, and we'll be sending that authentication token in this method. So at first we'll be creating HTTP client, and using this URI we will be grabbing all the user contents with the help of authentication token that we generated. So this is the process of generating all the user information. You can just see over here, we'll just get a stream of response, and then with the help of Newtonsoft.json, that is, we can deserialize all the response that we get of the user using Newtonsoft.json. So this is the process in order to deserialize all the user content. So this is the line of code which helps us to deserialize the response that we get from our Google API.com Auth2. So in order to deserialize it, we need a model class named at Google Response Model, which gets deserialized. We'll just inherit that thing, and then which will give us our user content, that is email or anything you may like. So it depends upon your requirement, what you are expecting from Google Developer Console. So let's create a new page name as my dashboard page, and create a new page, that is our content page. So whenever all the authentication process is done, then we will be navigating our users from our main page to the dashboard page. Await navigation.push async, then new my dashboard page. So you can just use app.current.main page equals new navigation page, new my dashboard page, if you don't want to send users from your main page to the dashboard page back again. So inside main page equals new navigation page, new main page helps us to navigate from our main page to my dashboard page. So whenever our app is getting navigated from main page to my dashboard page, then we will be sending the user email to this my dashboard page with the help of label name. So let's create a label name as logged in user email, and then put horizontal option as center and expand, and vertical option as center and expand. Then this label X name will have text which will be calling our email. So we will be just displaying the email of the user which was logged in. So let's run the app and just check it out whether it works or not. So you can just see over here, I just get authenticated, I just got the authentication token over here, I highly recommend you to use breakpoint and go through all the process. So I'm just clicking on F5. It just hit the first API, got our authentication token. The second part is getting all the information out of that authentication token. So this is what we expected from the Google Developer Console. You can just get images from Google Developer Console after verifying your redirect URL from the Google Developer Console, or else it's not possible to get the images, but we can just get the very basic information of the user, that is our user email and other stuffs. So we have time, let's add persistence inside our Xamarin Forms app so that the user does not again log in back. So this is not a recommended way in order to just persist the authentication token and check if that authentication token is active or not, that is our online or not. If it is active, then just send the user directly to the dashboard page. I'll just add some information over here. That is, we have to add some refresh token in order to implement our persistence. That is, whenever our user just logs in, then they are just going to the dashboard page without going to the login page. So inside the unappearing method, we'll just call the code. That is, we are going to just check whether our preferences, which is our local storage, will be checking whether that local storage contains our user token. If it contains user token, then we will be just checking the status of the user token. If it is online, then we will just push the code to the my dashboard page. So we don't want the user to return back to the login page. So let's do it using this way. That is, whenever our user is online, let's add that code over here. So if I'll just copy it, and then if access type equals online, then we'll just push the app to the dashboard page, or else just continue, that is return, continue with the login page. That's all. Now let's run the app. Let's check whether it goes to the code. It tells that okay, we got our authentication token and we are online. You can just see over here, and then we'll just directly navigate to my dashboard page. So we just didn't got our login page. So if some login page is fluctuating, then we can just make the visibility of the whole container itself. So you can just see over here, at first the login is going to display, and then directly it goes to the my dashboard page. So you can just hide the visibility of the login page, that is using grid name. Just make the visibility off. After verification only, we can just again recall the login page itself if the user is not online. So we have successfully completed all the authentication process. Local host web authentication was just for internal testing of the whole app. Now the major part is making our Google authentication, that is our web authentication, live. So how we gonna make that thing? If we are not using Azure, then I'll just use the Docker way, that is really free of cost, so that we can make our Google authentication live. We can download it for Windows too. So it has Windows installer file too. So the Windows installation, the first link will help us to reach to this link, and we can just download Docker for Windows. So let's wait till our app gets downloaded. So let me open our app. Then let me push the code to the application folder, and the whole process might be different on the Windows machine. We just need to install it and then open it. So this is done. So this is my Docker app. Let me open it. Click on open, and then at the top you can just see I have got one icon that is just animating it. We just need to go to the dashboard page of it or sign in, no worries. So this is the CLI code that need to be added inside the terminal. So you should use your PowerShell or the command on your Windows machine. So this is the CLI that I have just put it, And at first we need to go to the folder root. That is, you can see over here we got the whole sample app that we just ran from the Xamarin Essentials folder, correct? So we'll just use that, and then using cd space I'll just drag and drop, and we can just see we got our web authenticator source. Now here we can just see we have created a Docker file. That is, you can just see over here inside that sample.server.webauthenticator folder. Now type beam.docker file. So press I, then paste the code over here. So here we'll be using ASP.NET Core 3.1, and it might change later, so keep me updated whenever it does not work. So this is the folder name, sample.server.webauthenticator, and then using .NET Restore we are going to release our Docker file. So I highly recommend you to use whatever I have done over here, that is sample.server.webauthenticator is the working directory name. You can just see over here, at last we are going to generate a DLL file named as sample server with authenticator. Now press on ESC :WQ and then enter. So we have successfully saved our Docker file. Now our next work is to type docker build space dot. So it will do all its magical works over here in the backend, and then it will just tell us that we have successfully completed our build process for our Docker. Now our next work is to go to Heroku, where we will be just pushing our API live. So you have to just sign up for the Heroku web app. We don't need to sign up because I have already signed up. I just need to log in. So let me log in inside the Heroku. So it will take some time in order to log in. Then here we will be generating one API endpoint where we will be just pushing our whole API code with the help of URL link. So it needs Heroku CLI, that is command line interface. So it has two operations for Mac and Windows. So for the Windows we have to use either 64-bit installer or 32-bit, or if you have Mac then just put the code over here and then paste it and then click on enter. Now we have just set up the CLI for Heroku, and you know that I have already used that thing, so it tells me that I have already installed. So I just need to Heroku login, because we just need to log in and it will just navigate itself to some web browser where we need to log in. So we'll just return back to the CLI. Now we'll just make the container login of the Heroku, and we should get a login succeeded. Then our final part will be creating our Heroku web API. Yes, we got our first web API, that is our live. Now we need to push our container, that is our Docker container, to this API endpoint, that is limitless.legit, and it might be different in your case. So let me copy that whole URI endpoint to my notepad so that we'll be using it later. Now let's wait for some time as it got all the process for pushing that container to the API endpoint. Now our final step, that is our very final step in order to release our web app. So let's wait for some time. This is our final process in order to make our web API live for our Google authentication. Now you can just see over here, let's go to our Google Developer Console back again, where we have added, just verify whether you are using the latest project or not, that is our Xamarin Essential Google authentication that we made previously. Now you can just see over here we have got our web API from Heroku. Now we just need to copy it and then paste the code from here to here, excluding sign in Google, because that will be our redirect URL. So don't forget to add that sign in Google at last. Now Click on save. Replace the authentication URL that we just generated. So I'm going to copy it and then paste it. That's all. So let me fast forward this video. This is some very simple UI improvement, that is creating logout button, and you have to clear the authentication token, that is expiring the authentication token whenever logout button is clicked. So there is a very simple process. In order to do that, I highly recommend you to do some R&D and then get back to it. So I'm just clearing the preferences as of now in order to make this whole tutorial very simple. If you want to go in very deep way, then we can just clear, that is expire the authentication token, and then make the user again login back. So let me restart the app, and then after clicking on Google button, it should take me to the new API endpoint where we'll be grabbing our authentication token. So let me press F5, then it should provide me authentication token. So let me click on continue. Okay, we got our redirect URL mismatch. That's because we haven't put here HTTP. I'm 100% sure. So yes, we have done some mistake, that is HTTPS is not allowed, that is our app is not generating HTTPS request, so it is providing us HTTP redirect URL. That's why it was mistake. So let me restart the app and then let me continue it. Now it should give me the authentication token directly out of the app. So we got our authentication token and it gets navigated to the details page. That's all for this tutorial now. Thank you guys. Thanks for watching. Keep in touch for next tutorials.